OGs, rise up. Epic has finally brought back the Chapter 1 map, and we're finally going home. But beware, OGs, there's bears in our woods. Don't worry, though. These sweats got no idea who they're dealing with. Time to show them. Another day, another victory for the OGs. Taking down the sweats, the imposters among us. OG Fortnite returned, and the game exploded. Players had been asking for a return to the original map for years, and Epic had finally delivered, releasing a month-long event that promised to recreate the version of the game that many consider to be its best. One returning feature is the OG item shop, which now only featured a few options. A stark contrast from the Amazon store that many players had either loved or hated. But perhaps one of the most important changes was to the loot pool, which quickly caused pure chaos. Because if there's anything we've remembered about these old items, it's that they are exploitable. I mean, compared to the new ones, these items were raw, chaotic prototypes, and people quickly remembered that. Boogie bomb violations and impulse grenade betrayals swept across YouTube Shorts and TikTok alike. The memories, they're all coming back. As the season followed its scheduled evolution from Season 5 up, these nostalgic moments only became funnier. Memes like SEAL Team 6, a squad that was both loved and feared for its coordinated plays, went viral. It's scary to think that they're still out there. Debates began over the best way to manage your original hotbar, and even Ninja had his own resurgence. And that doesn't even mention the return of the Revolver God, an absolute apex predator among mere mortals.
Saddest moment of my life!
I bring up all these new clips and memes because I want to highlight how this is the first month that Fortnite has been relevant in a long time. Like, this event took it from being a washed up castaway to once again being the reason that people call out of work. Not only has this event given Fortnite its highest player count ever at over 44 million, it's also finally regained its status as a cultural phenomenon, something that it had yet to obtain since its original peak. It's back, it's got memories, it's like your lost dog finally came home. I mean, like, even if your old dog returns full of more microtransactions, it's still T-Bone. You know, whenever you miss something like Choco Tacos or Prime Fortnite, and there's always that one person on TikTok or Twitter who tells you you're just being nostalgic. They're like, oh, you don't miss OG Fortnite. You just miss how you felt back then. Like, it's this super deep point, this hard to swallow pill. And then everyone in the comments is having a revelation like, oh, this is so true.
Stop letting him make you realize stuff.
They were wrong. At least when it comes to OG Fortnite. Because now we know it wasn't just nostalgia. We actually have proof this game was peak. Everybody is playing it again, and the gameplay is absolutely pristine. Which brings me to the question of the day. Why did Epic Games wait over 5 years to bring it back? You think that an update that was highly requested and also really easy to implement wouldn't be missing for half a decade. It's like how Nintendo waited so long to finally add themes to the Switch, and then when we got them, there was all sorts of cool designs and it was super comfy cozy. Oh wait, no, that was a dream. Point is, you got people crawling out of the woodworks to play this game. I'm convinced that somewhere out there, there's an entire friend group that reunited just to play this. Goku and Peter and Mordecai, they all found their own games. But this brought them back. People who haven't played since middle school and are in college now are returning. That is a crazy amount of time. I've missed so many lectures. Someone please fill me in on Java. So my question is, why did Epic wait so long? What are those Infinity Blade wielding, Apple suing executives up to? Well, the truth is, I don't think they thought this would work, at least compared to whatever new concept art they're making right now. I think Epic Games genuinely believed that this event would be a failure, or at least something that wouldn't do as good as their new chapters. That, or even crazier, they didn't want it to succeed. A theory I will be talking about, so stay tuned for that. There's no real evidence for it. First of all, I want you to think about why it took so long for this to happen. Really put on your thinking caps and light your pretzel sticks. You're probably thinking that the wait was just some sort of business decision. We all know that Epic Games loves to use the fear of missing out. I still wake up in a cold sweat thinking about Omega Lights. So maybe they were just using another marketing strategy. They prolonged the update as a tactic to build up hype. Not like there was any marketing for it. But yeah, let's go with that. And that seems to make sense on the surface. However, when you look back at the grand scheme of things and how Epic has handled the updating of Fortnite, their actions, at least in my opinion, point to some pretty interesting motives. You can see that 1, they already passed on way better opportunities to do this, and 2, they believe that new content will always be better than old content, which is going to make me sound like a nostalgic person who cares way too much about Greasy Grove. And if you think that about me, you're probably not the target audience, but I promise if you just hear me out, I can explain both of these points, specifically by using Cypher PK's The Entire History of Fortnite Animated as one of my only sources. It's not a bad video. If you were to ask someone who played Fortnite during the earlier seasons, if they thought the game was updated enough, they'd probably say, "What are you doing in my house?" They would probably say yes, because even though the game was much simpler back then, it still received a consistent supply of small but celebrated features. The game was stable, and skins were actually significant because there weren't that many of them. For instance, when the Raven skin was announced, it caused the Epic Games Store to crash because it was the first edgy looking skin. My, how times have changed. Individual weapons were added alongside custom trailers announcing them. It was like, okay, this is a hand cannon. It's changing things up. Are we talking NPC Shark that camps you changing things up? No, but it's still going to add some spice to the game. There are also plenty of limited time game modes and challenges to keep people entertained. Subtle and well-timed events compared to the Roblox-like library we have today. I love the 50v50 game mode because it was charming. Does it have the same complexity as Guess the Real logo? We can debate about that. These updates were great at adding life to the game at a pace that kept things grounded. For all we know, this kind of strategy could have kept the game at its peak for a much longer time than it was given, because we don't actually know how long people would have played this state of Fortnite, due to Epic updating it more than my bio, aka too much to make it stay cool. Instead of allowing the game to ride its own wave, they instead drastically increased how much content it was getting. And that's when you started to notice that only one of those 10 people were still posting the game on their stories. It all really started when Season 8 came out, and you can just see the Google trend for Fortnite start to decline. Just adding and removing a couple core features drastically hurt the game's health. People are simple. They liked the game better when it was conceivable, but bananas and cannons and you've lost us. So what did Epic do? They just kept throwing more random, pardon my French, chug splash at the game, thinking that more updates would bring it back. But it didn't work, and Season 9 was the first battle pass that I left incomplete. It was like putting T-Bone down. Remember, Epic Games is a company. Their #1 priority is getting people to keep on playing their free game so they can buy stuff from it. And you'd think that it would be even more important in a company so competitive at animated legal propaganda. But based on the game's direction, you can see that their strategy was and would continue to be spectacle and novelty. Jingling keys through both features and especially crossovers. Just smacking stuff on that would get people on for a few days, a little spike before the game resumed its decline. If you look back again at the trends, which is all I have because Fortnite doesn't really show their numbers that much, this is not working. Sure, you've still got a huge amount of gamers playing this, but the majority have decided it's time to go back to Minecraft. This is one of the first instances where Epic should have really backed out and been like, okay, we had something good, let's just take it easy. And they had a chance when the first big opportunity came, when the whole map got conveniently sucked into a void. For those of you who weren't there, this was like your little cousin Braxton's Pompeii, and also a way better opportunity to go back to those now OG seasons. The game was already a shell of its former self, but it wasn't too late to turn back. Compared to today, Fortnite was still way fresher in people's minds. And according to Mr. PK himself, many were actually already banding for a return to the original season even back then. It could have been like, hey, Braxton said Season 3 is back. This is a great distraction after the whole T-Bone situation. But no, Epic completely fumbled the bag, or should I say over-engineered it, and went full mid. The reason I say that is because this was actually a better opportunity to go back, because for everyone who is returning to Fortnite for the OG event right now, there is definitely a chunk of people who have missed the memo because they moved on to a different life. It's literally been 5 years. If they had done this back then, I think they would have caught way more people, just because it would have still been a much more influential game. You can say that sounds like chug splash, the game wouldn't have been interesting enough, but the numbers that Epic got from their approach could not have been better than this. This hardly gave the game a pulse. It was like when we tried to revive T-Bone. More opportunities did show up after this, but they got progressively worse every time Epic passed on them. Because after that big chapter-changing event, the quarantine happened, and Fortnite just naturally got some traction from it because everyone was inside. That was another perfect time to roll it out. They could have absolutely used the momentum they already had to be king of the apocalypse. To be fair, it's not the worst opportunity that was fumbled, but instead they just continued their path of mediocrity. It almost feels like when an artist doesn't know when to stop adding to their work. Like they already painted a masterpiece, a perfect game, but then they just decided to keep on scribbling on it and add more and more stuff. And they didn't want to admit that there was no need for any more improvements. Instead, they just turned it into a product unrecognizable from the original. If it's a different game, you're not going to get the same people wanting to play it. Now let's fast forward to today. We have this awesome event, which I think came way too late due to Epic not believing in it. And if you think that they do, I ask you to simply look at how they actually handled the event. It's not an average season's length. It's not even half an average season's length. They only put aside a month for it. And even that short amount of time was split up by individual season. So it's like they don't even think that it can keep people on for a month, even though there's zero evidence that that's true. Like they should know by now that this is what people want, but they've gone and done it in a way where even the OG event points towards new content. Essentially, they're only using Fortnite OG as a way to catapult the success of their next chapter. Just based on looking at what they have in store for the next season, there's quite a bit of proof for this. Leaks have shown that Epic is planning their biggest update yet, with rumors of a GTA-like open world and collab with the LEGO Group. If that isn't the most irresistible combination, then call me Chase McCain. Epic doesn't believe in OG Fortnite, and so they're removing it on December 4th. Seems strange, right? We clearly know that OG does better than the new chapters. So now we get into the conspiracy theory. If Fortnite does its best with its original versions, why is Epic pushing new content so much? Well, it's gonna sound kind of crazy, but I think this is actually just an issue of needing things to do. It's very common in all sorts of workplaces for people to make unnecessary jobs to keep themselves important. There's actually a book on this called Chug Splash Jobs that talks about how a huge amount of people are creating and justifying useless work. Basically, whether they want more hours or just need to seem more busy, a lot of people will create fake or useless work to seem worth paying. Obviously, there's the cliche of the boss holding unnecessary meetings, but it happens everywhere. Advisors create unnecessary fears so they can be hired to fix them, and so do mechanics. If Epic Games, or more specifically Fortnite's team, were to admit that OG Fortnite was the best version of of the game, the developers wouldn't have anything to work on since there would be no updates left to develop. The hundreds of hours it takes to work on a new season would disappear, and so most of the development team would just not be necessary. Obviously, they could still work on bug fixes, cosmetics, and minor changes, but all the budget and payroll that would go into developing the new features would have no reason to exist. And speaking of the new features, if you look at them, you'll notice that most of the recent ones are really random and superfluous. Like, obviously, if you're planning to update a game like Fortnite, you're going to want your features to be creative, but I don't think anyone would have looked at this game before it added NPCs, or fishing, or mud, and say that any of that was necessary or even a good fit for the game. But if you're trying to justify pouring money into developing unnecessary updates, you're eventually going to start running out of ideas, while still trying to make intricate features that make the game look like it's worth funding. It kind of reminds me of the MCU and how many unnecessary shows and movies were created to justify as much investor money as possible. Yes, Disney turned up the amount of content being produced to make more money, but also to feed money back into the machine, thus hopefully increasing its profits and value as a franchise. And the way that the MCU tanked is pretty similar to Fortnite. It was grounded, but then low quality and useless content ruined it. People just talk about it more because it happened in a way more visible and concentrated scope. A lot of people are hoping that Epic will keep OG Fortnite as an optional game mode, and I'm really interested to see if they will. But if they put it in the vault, I feel like it's just going to be undeniable proof that they don't want to compete with or admit that their best work is behind them. I mean, imagine if they roll out this giant update with crossovers and investors on the line, and all that money and planning is just getting outperformed by something they made 5 years ago. Then the new updates would really look useless. Even if my theory seems far-fetched, you can't deny that Epic has only given OG Fortnite a short amount of time because they believe that new features are better for the game. However, in the end, it won't be enough, and OG Fortnite will prove its developers wrong when 90% of the fanbase leaves, including the Lorax. If my prediction is right, people will leave because they want simplicity, not complexity, and OG Fortnite's twofold success is proof of this. But if you like this video and you want to see more like it, please drop a like so I know to make more gaming content. Thanks for watching. I'm Lufa.